Hey folks, it's the Red, and welcome to the first of two extra videos that I have for Shantae Half-Genie Hero. In this first video, we're going to be having a look at the different transformations that didn't make it into the main playthrough, and then we're going to have a look at the other game modes that are available. But yes, there are a few other transformations that you can buy from the Snake Lady that I did not get a chance to show off during the main playthrough, such as Tinkerbat form. As the name suggests, it lets you transform into one of Risky's henchmen. As of this video, this transformation is only available for backers of the game, but I believe one day it's going to be publicly available. It carries over a lot conceptually from how it was first introduced in the Game Boy Color game. You can run, you can jump, you can slash with your sword. You can also press the jump button in the air to pull out this little copter pack that will let you hover to the ground slowly. Of course, if you mash the button, then you can just stay in the air longer, so that's kind of nifty to know about. You can probably use this form to try and reach some areas early, but personally, I don't like how slowly it walks, so I don't usually use this form all that much. Still, it's a pretty novel idea, and there's, admittedly a good amount of amusement in having a Tinkerbat fighting against other Tinkerbats. Next up, we have the Blobfish dance. On its surface, it doesn't really look like a particularly useful dance. It literally turns you into a blobfish, and then you just jump around. That's literally all you do. However, when you jump on enemies, you will soon discover that you can do 10 damage per stomp. This actually winds up being one of your strongest attacks, because there's not a whole lot Shantae can do that has a base damage this high. I was actually quite surprised by this when I first discovered it, and found all sorts of hilarious ways to make use of this. So yeah, I guess the Blobfish does have its functionality, so experiment with it. Who knows, it might actually be useful in your journey. Finally, we have the Sophia III dance, which lets you turn into the titular Sophia III, which is the name of a gunship that you pilot in the NES game Blaster Master. In that game, you can move the ship around, jump, and you can shoot stuff by aiming your turret in certain directions. Same thing applies in Half-Genie Hero. You move, you jump, you shoot, and you can aim up. So this actually gives you a pretty good attack for overhead. On top of that, Sophia III also moves very quickly, so this is a good dance to use if you want to get around faster. Unfortunately, it doesn't hover or have any of the wall climbing features that it had in the original game, so it's pretty much just run, jump, and shoot. Still, this thing is pretty fun to use, so I would recommend giving it a try. But with that, we've now covered all the transformations in the game, so now let's move on to the game modes and DLC for this game. First up, we have Hero Mode, which is literally the same as the main game, except you start with all of your major transformations from the get-go. This is pretty much just good for helping you get all the collectibles early on and to cut down on some of the backtracking. You do have to beat the game once in order to unlock it, but it's there if you want it. Next up, we have Hardcore Mode. Oh boy, Hardcore Mode. A few things are changed around to make the main game harder. For one thing, some enemy placements have changed, enemies move faster, and of course, they hit harder. A good bit harder in some cases. For example, Tinkerbats are now capable of doing 3 damage to you. That's almost an entire heart. The Gators at Mermaid Falls are now capable of one-shotting you if you haven't gotten a heart holder yet. And of course, enemy attacks have also sped up. Yeah, there's a lot you're going to need to watch out for here. Another thing that's changed in this mode is that now you can only carry up to 6 food items in your inventory slots. I don't find this too troublesome because 6 of each food item is still plenty to see you through the game. Other than that, I don't really see anything else that makes this game mode any harder. The shop items aren't more expensive. The stages themselves are unchanged, so if you've played through the game once or twice already, I don't think Hardcore Mode is going to be too much of a problem for you. Still, watch out for those enemies. Next up, we're going to have a look at the Costume DLC, which came in a pack of 3. The gameplay of these costume modes are very similar to that of Friends to the End, in that you're going through each of the levels in a sequential order, collecting gems to power yourself up along the way. Let's start by looking at Officer Mode. Shantae is dressed as a police officer, and all she can do is run, jump, shoot, and cause these blocks to move in and out from the stage. If this gameplay style looks familiar, then you might be familiar with another WayForward game called Mighty Switch Force. In that game, you shift blocks around in order to solve puzzles and capture escaped convicts. The same gameplay style is applied here. It almost feels like an entirely different game because of it. It's a pretty interesting idea that puts a unique spin on the traditional gameplay, but you are still playing through the same levels, so don't expect it to change too much. And of course, be careful to not accidentally shoot yourself into the screen by making a block up here where you are. Though I must say, there is something oddly amusing about making it happen to the enemies. Next up, we have Beach Mode, where Shantae is dressed in a swimsuit. WayForward sure likes their swimsuits. And sets out to find the most perfect beach ever. This gameplay style is quite a thing. For the most part, it's traditional Shantae gameplay with your run, jump, and hair whip, but you can also spike beach balls into your enemies, and you can even fly around in a bubble, which feels a little broken. I mean, heck, you can use it to fly over a level if you wanted to. But one of the big changes about this particular game mode is that you have a sundial in the corner. After about 15 to 20 seconds, you'll start taking sunburn damage, and you need to collect sunscreen or jump in water to protect your body from the harmful sun rays. Even if you're in a building, at night, in the rain. How is she taking sunburn damage here? But yes, because of the sunscreen system that this game pushes on you, you're encouraged to continuously keep moving so that you can get to the next sunscreen bottle so that you don't wind up taking more damage than you should, because again, you've only got 3 hearts to work with and no way to restore it outside of jars. This can especially be troublesome during boss fights when you need to rely on certain moments for a sunscreen bottle to appear so that you can continue the fight. The system is kind of wonky and I don't much care for it, and I don't usually play Beach Mode all that much because of it. Next up, we have Ninja Mode. Oh man, now this is a good mode. In this mode, you're dressed as a ninja. Go out and do ninja things. Very simple. But seriously, Shantae is out to try and become a true ninja in this game mode. Once again, it's borrowing another game's gameplay style. This time it's Ninja Gaiden from the NES. In that game, you can run around and hit people with a sword, throw shurikens at them, climb and jump off of walls. Pretty much the same thing you're doing here in Half Genie Hero. The action is fun and fast-paced, and I rather enjoy this game mode, really. She also has a Ninja Vanish move that lets her teleport around very quickly, almost like an instant transmission of sorts. Out of all 3 of the costume DLCs, this one's definitely my favorite. But as a whole, I would have a hard time recommending the costume DLC even as a pack, and only really the last level changes at the very end in order to accommodate for the new playstyle. You're otherwise just playing through the same levels, the same bosses, and the only thing that really changes is the playstyle and the dialogue that Shantae has with each of the bosses, which admittedly is pretty humorous to watch. But there is one more costume DLC to talk about. Jammies Mode was the final DLC released for the game. It acts as a bit of a celebration for the project's completion. Shantae has set out to invite all of her friends, and her enemies, to the ultimate slumber party, and she's going to do so by traversing all the levels with one of the most OP pillows I think I've ever seen. Seriously, what does she have in that thing that's making it do 10 damage to enemies? A pillow, of all things! You're also able to throw sheep at enemies, and you can fly around in a cloud just like the bubble from Beach Mode. There's not too much else to say about this game mode. It's basically just an easier version of the other costume DLCs, which I think is just there for fun. It does make for a nice way to cap things off with this game. I also find it kind of funny how between all 4 of these costume DLCs, they have basically the same intro dialogue during this part. And then we have the ending pictures, which, as you could probably guess, don't really change much based on what we saw from the other DLC episodes. They're there if you want them, but personally I don't think it's worth 4 more playthroughs of the game just to see a slightly different version of the same picture. I don't know, that's just me though. And now, to cap off this video, the mighty Risky Boots is felled by a mouse. Yeah, there's actually an achievement if you're playing one of the other versions of the game for doing this. You don't have to do the entire fight in mouse form, you only need to do the final attack in mouse form. Still, that's a pretty hilarious way to finish her off. But with that, thank you very much for watching, and join us next time for the second extra video where we'll be having a look at all the concept and fan art for the game. See you then!